Mingho listened to the soft hum of the Galactic Council chamber. The air was cool and smelled faintly of ozone and something else, a sweet alien scent he had never liked. Around the vast circular room, the representatives of the founding species glowed, perched or floated in their designated sections. He stood in the smaller, less adorned human sector, his simple gray suit stark against their shimmering bioluminescence and metallic robes. For 100 years, humanity had been a member of this council. For 100 years, they had been told they were emotional, impulsive, and tragically short-lived. They were given the heaviest resource quotas for the stability of the galactic whole, and their petitions for fair trade were met with patient, condescending smiles. Minho, a diplomat from Bizon, who preferred quiet observation to loud speeches, had spent a decade here. He had learned to swallow insults phrased as advice. But today, the data stream on his private monitor felt like a physical weight in his stomach. The session droned on. Counselor Veller of the Terran, a tall, avian being with iridescent blue feathers and cold black eyes, was speaking. His translated voice was a smooth, emotionless baritone. The motion to rezone Sector 47G for crystalline extraction is approved. The client species of the region will be compensated with energy credits, as per standard developmental protocol. Client species. That meant the Rill, a gentle aquatic people who would lose their spawning grounds. Minho's jaw tightened. He had tried to argue for them last week. It had done no good. The Council's standard protocols always seemed to benefit the powerful. He glanced again at his monitor. The message was from his younger cousin Sumin, who had emigrated to the colony world New Daegu 5 years ago. It was a video file, time-stamped 6 hours ago. He hadn't opened it yet. Official council business required his focus. But a sense of dread had been gnawing at him since the morning, when a terse, official notice had flashed across the diplomatic feed. Asterisk Planet GPX 9921, New Daegu. Declared a Class A preservation site under Galactic Heritage Code. 7. All current settlements are hereby unlawful. Evacuation to commence immediately. Asterisk New Daegu. A beautiful, Earth-like world where his people had worked tirelessly for 2 generations. They had built farms that produced unique grains. They had established peaceful trade with a neighboring pre-space species, the furry little Nax. It was a success story, a symbol of human perseverance. And now it was being taken out finally. The session reached new business human affairs. Minho straightened his shoulders. Counselor Weiler turned his sleek head toward him. Ambassador Minho, the Council trusts you have informed your government of the preservation order for GPX 9921. I have. Counselor, Minho said, his voice calm despite the heat in his veins. And I am here to formally protest. The planet New Daegu has been thoroughly surveyed. No evidence of a prior galactic civilization, let alone a sacred KVARN burial site, was ever found in 60 years of human habitation and 15 years of pre-colonization scans. Valere made a soft clicking sound, a Terran sign of mild annoyance. Our archival drones have re-examined the planetary crust. New, deeper spectral analysis has revealed distinct Kvarn mineral signatures in the southern hemisphere river valleys. Your scanning technology is, understandably, not as sensitive. The site is sacred. The preservation is non-negotiable. Those river valleys are where the primary agricultural settlements are. Minho replied, keeping his hands flat on the podium. Families live there. They have built homes, schools. The evacuation order gives them 48 hours. They cannot possibly. The timeline is set to minimize spiritual contamination, interrupted another counselor, a Mordani whose voice bubbled through a translator box. You are compensated with standard relocation credits. Credits cannot replant a harvest that is weeks from gathering, Minho said, his calm beginning to crack. They cannot rebuild a community. Where are these people supposed to go? The transport ships you have allocated are insufficient. This is not an evacuation. It is a forced removal. The chamber was silent. Other representatives watched, some with indifference, a few with what might have been pity. No one spoke in his defense. Councillor Valor leaned forward slightly. Ambassador, your attachment to dirt and simple structures is a noted primitive trait of your species. You must see the larger picture. The galactic cultural heritage is paramount. Your people's minor discomfort is irrelevant. Accept our wisdom in this matter. The words hung in the air. Primitive trait. Minor discomfort. Irrelevant. Minho felt the last thread of his diplomatic restraint snap. But he did not shout. His voice dropped, low and cold. You are not taking a disputed mineral claim. You are expelling children from their beds. You are crossing a line. Valaire's feathers ruffled, a sign of supreme dismissal. The line was drawn by the Galactic Council 10,000 years before your species invented the wheel. The discussion is over. The Enforcer fleet is already in orbit to ensure a orderly transition. The session moved on. Minho stood frozen for a long moment. Then, mechanically, he gathered his datapads. He walked out of the chamber, the eyes of the galaxy upon his back, feeling smaller and more alone than he ever had in his life. Back in the sparse human diplomatic quarters, the door sealed behind him with a hiss. Only then did he allow himself to tremble. He activated his secure terminal and finally opened Sumin's video message. The image shook at first. It was his cousin, her face smudged with dirt, her eyes wide with fear. The sky behind her was a beautiful new Dagu orange, but it was streaked with the ominous shadows of large, non-human ships. Minho Appa, Sumin whispered, her voice cracking. They're here. The big ships. They didn't even land. They're sending down robots and armed figures in environment suits. They're telling us we have 2 hours to gather essential personal items. They're pushing people with shock prods if they move too slowly. Halmione couldn't walk fast, and they just took her from Appa's arms and put her on a speeder. Papa tried to stop them, and they hit him. He's bleeding. The camera panned shakily, showing the chaos. A Terran enforcer in sleek armor used the butt of an energy rifle to smash the front window of a house. A child wailed, clutching a stuffed toy. A human man was arguing, pointing to his fields, only to be shoved to the ground by a hulking Mordani soldier. They're not letting us take any food. Sumin wept, the camera blurring. They're not letting us take the seed banks. They're setting fire to the storage silos. Minho Appa, they're burning our food. They're burning everything. The transmission ended abruptly with a burst of static. Minho sat in the dark room, the ghostly blue light of the terminal playing over his face. The quiet, simmering anger of a decade boiled over, solidifying into something cold, hard, and absolute. This was not politics. This was not a harsh bargain. This was cruelty for the sake of showing they could do it. They had taken his people's work, their safety, their dignity. They had pushed children and elders into the dirt. He had warned Valere about a line. The council had not just crossed it. They had spat upon it. His fingers moved across the terminal, activating a channel so encrypted that only a handful of humans in the galaxy even knew it existed. The authorization sequence was long and complex. Finally, a simple text interface appeared. He typed, each keystroke deliberate and final. Priority Alpha. Secure Channel Brahma. Recipient, Earth Central Command, Chairperson's eyes only. He took a deep breath, seeing Sumin's tear-streaked face, the burning silos, Valere's dismissive gaze. The message was short. It contained no emotional pleas, no diplomatic nuance. It was a simple statement of fact, a transmission from a man who had finally run out of patience. He wrote, "They're not just exploiting us anymore. They're erasing us. The line has been crossed. They have finally pushed too far. Humanity must snap back." He hit send. The message vanished into the quantum void, heading towards a home that was now farther away than ever. Minho leaned back, the weight in his stomach replaced by a hollow, ready calm. The talking was done. The signal from Minho arrived on Earth not as a sound, but as a silent, urgent ripple in the most secure layer of the data net. It bypassed all normal government channels and went straight to a place that did not officially exist. A quiet, unmarked facility deep beneath the calm green hills of Zhu Island, in a room lit by the soft glow of holograms. A woman named Jisu received the alert. A single steady tone chimed in her ear implant. She was small in stature, with sharp, observant eyes and hair tied back in a no-nonsense manner. She did not look like a soldier. She looked like someone who solved puzzles for a living, which was exactly what she was. She tapped the air, opening Minho's message. She read it once. Her expression, usually so focused and neutral, hardened. She had been expecting a message like this for most of her adult life. She just hadn't known what the final reason would be. She stood up from her workstation, where schematics for a Morgani power core floated in the air. Without a word, she walked down a corridor that hummed with low energy. The other people in the facility, men and women dressed in simple gray jumpsuits, saw her face and stopped what they were doing. They knew that look. The waiting was over. Jisu entered a larger chamber. In the center was a round table, already filling with holographic figures, the United Earth Defense Directorate. Their faces were grim, lit from below by their own terminals. At the head sat an old man with a weary face, General Park. He looked at Jisu. "The message from Ambassador Minho has been verified," Jisu said, her voice clear in the quiet room. "The Galactic Council has seized New Daegu. Full forced expulsion. They are using shock prods on our elderly and burning the food supplies. Ambassador Minho's assessment is that diplomacy has conclusively failed." A murmur went around the table. One of the holograms, a woman from the Mars colony, slammed her hand down. "This is an act of war." "It is an act of contempt," General Park corrected quietly. "They do not consider it war any more than a person considers sweeping dust to be a battle." He turned his old eyes to Jisu. "Director Jisu, a century ago, our founders knew we could never win a straight fight. They were physicists, biologists, psychologists. They asked one question: what do you do when you are weaker?" Jisu nodded. "You do not try to become stronger in their way. You learn their weaknesses. You wait." She gestured, and the room's main holographic display ignited. It showed the galaxy, with the core systems of the Galactic Council shining brightly. "For 5 generations, we have played the role they assigned us, the clever but emotional younger sibling. Good at simple engineering, good at growing things, poor at long-term strategy, or so they believed." The display zoomed in on the Terran. Our mediocre public technology was a mask. While they monitored our weapons and ship development, we studied them. Our greatest minds were not in shipyards. They were in xenobiology labs, resonance physics chambers, and neural network simulations. An image of a Terran appeared, its complex feather structure highlighted. The Terran communicate through subsonic hive frequencies. They consider it undetectable. 80 years ago, a human xenolinguist named Dr. Kwan isolated the base frequency. We have spent decades refining a counterharmonic. On the display, a wave of blue light met a wave of red. The red dissolved into chaotic, jagged lines. We can turn their greatest strength, their perfect coordination, into screaming noise. The image shifted to the armored Mordani. The Mordani rely on servo-assisted exo-armor. Its control system uses a specific crystalline lattice to process commands. A molecular diagram appeared. This lattice has a resonant fragility. A carefully tuned energy pulse, broadcast on a common galactic data carrier wave, will cause a cascading failure. The armor doesn't break. It just stops or moves randomly. A warrior becomes a prisoner in his own shell. Next came the Zenth, a species of pure logic that used complex artificial intelligences to run their entire society. The Zenth A is our magnificent, but they are built on a foundational logic that cannot process certain paradoxes rooted in human emotional contradiction. We have crafted a digital worm. We call it a Gidgel's kiss. It doesn't destroy. It asks an unanswerable question. It causes the AI to loop, to hesitate, to doubt its own calculations. The room was silent, the director staring at the display. "These are not weapons," Jisoo said. "They are keys. Keys to locks they never knew they had. We do not have a fleet to match theirs. We do not need one. We have a symphony of failure, composed just for them." General Park leaned forward. "Can it be done? System-wide? Without harming civilian populations?" Jisoo's answer was immediate. "The protocols are surgical. The Terran disruption affects only military hive bands. The Mordani pulse targets only their specific armor frequency. The Zenth worm is designed to only propagate through their high-level governance networks. It will cause economic and logistical chaos, not shut down life support. And we have assets in place. Operatives like Taeyun, embedded for years. Data splicers like Yuna, inside their trade hubs. They are ready to guide the effect. And what is our goal?" asked the Mars representative. "To destroy them?" "No," Jisoo said, her voice firm. "To teach them a lesson they will never forget. Our goal is to make their dominance impossible. To show them that the primitive species they pushed around has been holding a knife to their throat for generations, and was just too kind to press it. We force them back to the table. On our terms." She looked at each of the holographic faces. "They believe our empathy is a flaw. They are wrong. It is our greatest weapon. To understand what hurts someone, you must first understand them. We have understood them perfectly." General Park sat back. The weight of the decision was on him. This was not a declaration of war. It was the activation of a doomsday weapon designed not to kill, but to humble. He thought of the videos from New Daegu, the burning grain. He thought of a century of slights and quotas, and being called childish. He gave a single, slow nod. "Activate Operation Jollahern." The order, once given, spread not with sirens or rallies, but with a series of quiet clicks across the solar system. In a lab on Mars, Jisoo's team initiated the first resonance broadcast, piggybacking on a routine Terran entertainment feed. In a data center on Luna, the Gidgel's kiss worm was released into the Zenth financial update stream. On 100 hidden asteroids and quiet satellites, focused pulse emitters powered up, targeting Mordani fleet positions. Jisoo stood before the main console in the Jeju facility. A world-sized timer counted down. There was no grand speech. She simply watched the numbers fall to zero. They wanted to see what happens when humanity snaps. She said to the empty air, her reflection clear in the dark glass of the screen, "Let's show them." She pressed the final key. Across the galaxy, nothing exploded. No sirens blared. But in that moment, the invisible foundations of the Galactic Council's power began, silently, to crack. The change began not with a bang, but with a strange, quiet wrongness. On the bridge of the Terran enforcement vessel Sky Sovereign, hovering in high orbit over New Daegu, Captain KRA felt it first as a faint itch in the back of his mind. It was a discomfort in the communal song, the subsonic hum that connected him to every other Terran on the ship, a constant stream of data, feeling, and perfect coordination. The itch became a buzz. The buzz became a sharp, discordant screech inside his skull. He ruffled his blue feathers, a sign of severe agitation. "Report," he clicked, his voice tense. "The harmony is distorted." His navigation officer turned, her own eyes wide with confusion. "Captain, the fleet data stream is breaking up. I am receiving conflicting positional data from the Claw of Justice. Their signals are chaotic. They sound angry and afraid." On the main viewer, the sleek shapes of the other Terran ships, which had been holding a perfect diamond formation, began to drift. One veered slowly toward the planet, its thrusters firing in unscheduled bursts. Another began a slow, uncontrolled spin. The Hive Channel, usually a river of clear, unified thought, was now a raging storm of noise panic, fragmented sensor readings, and raw, unstructured emotion. Without their silent song to coordinate them, the Terran were suddenly alone in their own heads, blind and deaf to their siblings. The Sky Sovereign's own systems were fine, but its crew was descending into frantic, individual chaos in the lower decks. A human named Taeyan monitored the situation from a small maintenance console. He was a quiet man, forgettable, who had spent 3 years on this ship fixing environmental systems. He was well liked for his calm demeanor and good work. As the Terran around him clutched their heads, chirping in distress, he simply watched his screen. A small, green indicator flashed in the corner. Resonance. Wave active. Phase 1 complete. He tapped a secure code into a device no bigger than his thumb. "Primary target neutralized," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They never even saw me." He then went back to calmly realigning a faulty air filter. The perfect picture of a helpful, confused non-combatant. On the planet's surface, a squad of Mordani enforcers was marching a group of stunned human colonists towards a transport. The Mordani were large, crustacean-like beings encased in powered armor that made them towers of polished black metal. Their leader, a warrior named Grash, felt powerful. The primitives were offering no real resistance. This was simple work. Then his left leg stopped, not froze. It just refused his mental command to step forward. He stumbled, his great weight lurching. A confused grunt echoed inside his helmet. He tried to reissue the command. His right arm then swung upward violently for no reason, smacking the soldier next to him. Alarms chirped in his helmet display. System error. Motor control anomaly. All around him, his squad was falling apart. One warrior's armor began to spin rapidly in place, disorienting the being inside. Another's weapon systems activated and deactivated in a frantic, blinking cycle. A third simply locked up completely, becoming a rigid, helpless statue. Inside their shells, the mighty Mordani warriors roared in frustration and mounting fear, trapped and manipulated by their own technology. The human colonists stopped, staring in shock as their towering guards became a chaotic, harmless jumble of twitching metal. On the bustling trade nexus of Zerzura Prime, a center of galactic commerce, the news of the strange events began to filter in. But here, a different kind of failure was unfolding. A Zenith merchant, a being of pure logic that resembled a floating crystal spire, was negotiating a complex contract. Suddenly, its connection to the central market intelligence, the AI that governed all fair pricing and logistics, stuttered. The AI's voice, usually so fluid and certain, became halting. The exchange rate for crystalline helium is recalculating. The prior calculation was based on a premise that may be incomplete. Query: if a transaction benefits the seller but harms the buyer's future potential, Is the trade efficient? Does efficiency require happiness? Can happiness be quantified? Quantification requires a scale. What is the scale? The Zenith merchant pulsed with confused light. The AI was philosophizing. It was doubting. This was impossible. Across the Nexus, lights flickered. Automated loading docks seized up, arms frozen mid-swing. Banking AIs, tasked with moving vast sums of credit, began to transfer funds into recursive self-canceling loops. The perfect, logical machine of Zenith economy was grinding to a halt. Infected by a virus of existential uncertainty. In a dark server room, a young human woman named Yuna watched it all unfold on her monitors. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, guiding the digital worm she had just released into the core network. She saw the confusion ripple outwards. She took a sip of cold coffee, a small smile on her lips. They told us our emotions made us irrational, she muttered to herself. Let's see how they like a little irrationality in their perfect logic. Back on the Sky Sovereign, Captain KRA was in a full panic. He could not hear his fleet. He could not feel his crew. The isolation was terrifying. His ship's sensors showed the Mordani ground forces were immobilized. Reports from across the sector spoke of Zenith systems failing. This was not a coincidence. This was a massive, coordinated attack. Who is doing this? He shrieked, his diplomatic baritone gone, replaced by a raw avian scream. Is it the Krill Empire? The Silt Syndicate? Scan for stealth ships. It must be a new weapon. His sensor officer, struggling against the noise in his mind, stammered. No stealth signatures, Captain. No weapon impacts. It is. It is as if the galaxy itself is turning against us. Our own tools betray us. The Terran, the Mordani, the Zenith, all the powerful founding species of the Council, were stumbling in the dark. Their technology, their biology, their very strengths had been turned into vulnerabilities. And they had no enemy to fight. No ships to blast, no soldiers to shoot. Their enemy was a whisper in their comms, a flaw in their armor, a ghost in their machines. In the Galactic Council hub. The emergency alarms were now blaring, but they were a physical sound, a pathetic replacement for the silent, efficient telepathic alerts that had failed. Councillor Villers stood in the now chaotic chamber, his feathers puffed out in rage and fear. Representatives shouted, hurling accusations at rival empires and obscure rogue factions. Valor's mind raced. This was an act of war unlike any in the history of the Council. It was clean, surgical, and utterly humiliating. Whoever was behind it was not just powerful. They were clever. A deep, cold dread settled in his stomach. He looked across the room, past the panicking Zenith and the furious Mordani ambassador. His eyes landed on the human sector. It was empty. Ambassador Mino was gone. There was only a quiet, dark space where the human had stood. And in that moment, amidst the chaos of his own failing senses and the cacophony of the chamber, a terrible, impossible thought began to form in Valar's mind. It was a thought so ridiculous, so offensive to galactic order, that he tried to reject it. But it clung to him, cold and sharp. What if the Who was not a mighty empire from the galactic rim? What if it was the quiet, patient gardeners they had just pushed into the dirt? The great council chamber, once a symbol of serene and untouchable power, had become a cage of chaos. The air, usually still and perfumed, was thick with the sharp scent of Terran fear pheromones and the clicking roars of furious Mordani. The Zenith representatives floated silently, their crystalline forms dim, cut off from the logic streams that were their lifeblood. View screens around the room flickered with reports of the silent catastrophe. Fleets adrift, armies paralyzed, economies freezing. Into this storm, the main doors opened with a soft hiss. Mino walked in, He did not stride with triumph. He did not march with anger. He simply entered, the same quiet man in the same simple gray suit. But the very normality of him in the midst of their panic was like a shock of cold water. Conversations died. All eyes, both physical and sensory, turned to him. He walked to the human podium. He did not sit. He stood, waiting for the silence to become complete. It took a full minute. The Mordani ambassador finally stopped his furious clicking. Counselor Valair, his feathers still partially flared, stared with unblinking black eyes. Ambassador Minho, Valair said, his translated voice trying and failing to find its usual smooth authority. It was strained, ragged at the edges. You returned to us in a moment of crisis. Your timing is noted. Minho ignored the implication. He placed a small, ordinary-looking data crystal on the podium. It glinted under the lights. The galaxy is in crisis, Counselor, Minho said, his voice calm, clear, and carried by the chamber's audio system to every listener. It was also being broadcast, by his request, on every open galactic channel. The whole galaxy, from the grandest capital world to the smallest trading outpost, could hear him now. You are searching for an enemy. You are looking for fleets, for armies, for a declaration of war. He paused, letting his gaze travel over the assembled faces of the mighty. He saw their confusion, their fear, their dawning suspicion. You will not find them, he said simply. The disruptions you are experiencing, the broken harmonies, the frozen armor, the failing logic, they are not an attack from a hidden foe. They are a consequence. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Valair took a step forward. What are you saying, human? Speak plainly. I am speaking very plainly, Minho replied, his tone unchanged. You took our home. You broke your own laws of fair annexation. You called our pain minor discomfort and our attachment primitive. You believed that because we feel deeply, we are weak. You believed that because we talk before we fight, we cannot fight. You were wrong. He picked up the data crystal, holding it between his thumb and forefinger for all to see. This contains a set of resonance keys and deactivation codes. It holds the cure for the silence in the Terran minds. It has the frequency to reset the Mordani armor. It carries the logic patch to soothe the Zenith eyes. He saw hope flare in many eyes. It was a cruel thing to extinguish, but necessary. It is a demonstration. Proof that what is happening is not random chaos, but a precise, controlled action. The hope turned back to confusion, then to cold. Slow dawning horror. You, whispered the Mordani ambassador, his bubbling voice full of disbelief. Us, Minho confirmed. He looked at Velar. You asked me to accept your wisdom. Now you will accept our terms. He laid them out, one by one, his voice never rising. 1. The planet you call GPX 9921, New Daegu, is to be returned to human governance immediately. All council forces will withdraw within 12 hours. Full reparations will be made for all destroyed property and stolen harvests. 2. All punitive resource quotas against humanity and its allied client species are abolished permanently. New trade agreements will be negotiated, with humanity as an equal partner. 3. Humanity will be granted a permanent, veto-capable seat on this council's high command, not as a junior member, but as a founding-level authority. The chamber erupted. Shouts of outrage, clicks of denial, pulses of angry light filled the air. Valair's voice cut through it, sharp with fury and a trace of panic. You dare? You think you can blackmail the Galactic Council? We will trace this trick of yours. We will dismantle your pathetic civilization. Minho waited for the noise to subside again. When he spoke, his words were quieter, but they carried a final, absolute weight that silenced the room more completely than any shout. You have 12 hours to decide. he said. If you agree, broadcast your acceptance on the open channel. The disruptions will cease. Your harmony, your armor, your logic will be restored. He took a slow breath, his eyes locking with Velair. If you refuse, or if you attempt to attack any human world, we will not respond with weapons you can see. We will broadcast the next sequence. It is not a key. It is a lock. The Terran hive mind will not just go silent. It will turn in on itself, creating permanent, screaming madness. The Mordani armor will not just freeze. Its life support will reverse, becoming tombs for the warriors inside. The Zenith Is will not just hesitate. They will conclude that non-existence is the only logical state and initiate total system shutdown. The terrible, simple truth of it settled over the chamber. This was not a negotiation. It was an unveiling. The primitive gardeners had not just found a stick to fight with. They had been silently cultivating the seeds of the Council's destruction for a century, and had just decided to let them sprout. We do not seek your destruction, Minot said, and he sounded almost sad. We never did. We sought a place at the table. You gave us a corner on the floor. You pushed us, and then you pushed our families into the mud and burned our food. So we stood up. He placed the data crystal back on the podium. The choice is yours. You can have your power back and share the galaxy. Or you can cling to your pride and lose everything. You have 12 hours. He gave a small, formal nod. Then he turned and walked back towards the doors. The sound of his footsteps on the polished floor was the only sound in the vast, stunned room. He did not look back. He had said everything that needed to be said. The message was not just for the Council. It was for every species listening on the open channel, for the oppressed client races, for the neutral systems, for every being who had ever wondered if the Council's rule was eternal. The message was clear. The giants could be humbled. And humanity, the patient, watching, feeling species, had just done the humbling dot as the doors closed behind Minho, sealing him out of the chaos. The first true, unadorned fear took hold in the heart of Counselor Velair. He looked at the data crystal, shimmering on the human podium like a drop of poison. He looked at his fellow counselors, who were no longer majestic rulers, but confused, vulnerable creatures. The foundation of his world, 10,000 years of certainty, had just been pulled out from under him by the quietest people in the room. The line had been crossed. And now, the galaxy had to live on the other side of it. The silence in the council chamber lasted for a full hour after Minho left. It was a thick, heavy silence, broken only by the low, distressed clicks of the Terran and the uneasy grinding of Mordani mandibles. The data crystal sat on the human podium, a tiny, terrifying object. View screens still showed the chaos outside, a galaxy grinding to a halt. Counselor Vylar was the first to move. He walked slowly to the podium, his feathers flat against his body in a posture of profound defeat. He did not touch the crystal. He simply stared at it. The arguments had raged, of course. The Mordani had sworn to launch a full assault on Earth. The Zenith had calculated the probability of tracing the source of the disruptions. It was negligible. The Terran had felt the screaming isolation in their own minds and knew, with animal certainty, that the humans' threat of madness was real. They were not beaten by force. They were checkmated by revelation. The truth was, humanity held a knife to the throat of every system they relied on. Fighting meant suicide. With a trembling hand, Vylar activated the open galactic channel. He did not speak of victory or compromise. He simply stated, in a hollow voice, that the Galactic Council accepted the terms of the human ambassador. The orders were given. The enforcer fleet around New Deju powered down its weapons and began a slow, shameful retreat. The quotas were officially repealed. On Earth and Mars and in the hidden labs, the watchful humans saw the message. Jisoo, in the Jeju facility, monitored the Council's compliance in real time. She saw the Terran ships leave orbit. She verified the Morgani boarding their transports. She gave a small, tight nod. "Initiate stabilization protocol," she said. "Phase 1 only. Restore primary functions. Keep the secondary. Contingencies ready." Across the galaxy, the silent pressure eased. The discord in the Terran hive mind softened into a whisper, then faded, leaving behind a haunting echo and a terrible headache. The Mordani armor shuddered and rebooted, unlocking its prisoners. The Zine Thay stopped their philosophical loops and resumed calculations, though a new subtle subroutine now logged every illogical human-style variable it encountered. The crisis was over. But the galaxy was changed. Weeks later, Minho walked into a new office. It was in the central spire of the Council Hub, with a view of the swirling nebula that filled the sky. It was the office of a High Counselor of a founding species. His assistant was a young Terran, who bowed his head, not a full submissive bow, but a bow of genuine, nervous respect, and handed Minho a data slate. The reports on the new Daegu resettlement. "Counselor," the aide said, using the title for the first time. It sounded strange, but not unpleasant. Minho took it. "Thank you." He looked at the young Terran. "You don't have to be nervous. The lesson is learned. Now we work." He turned to the window. On his desk, a small live feed showed New Daegu. The fires were out. Human ships, now allowed free passage, were landing with supplies and building materials. He could see tiny figures already working in the fields, salvaging what they could. His cousin Suman had sent a message. Their father's head injury was healing. They were home. It was not a happy ending. Too much had been broken for that. The trust was gone, replaced by a cold, clear understanding. But it was a beginning. On Mars, Jisoo walked through her now active lab. The resonance emitters were quiet. Her team was now engaged in a different project, creating selective shields to protect human systems from similar subversion. They were also, as per the new agreement, preparing limited versions of the stabilization technology to share with the Council, a way to defend against future threats, a symbol of cooperation that was also a permanent reminder of what humanity could do. A colleague, a man named Day, joined her at the observation window. "They're calling it the Quiet War on the news feeds," he said. Jisoo shook her head. It wasn't a war. It was a conversation they finally decided to hear. She watched a transport ship lift off from the Martian dock, carrying agricultural aid for New Daegu. "We showed them our teeth so they would never make us bite. Now we show them our hands so they might learn to shake them." Back on the Council Hub, the new dynamic was taking shape. Humanity did not swagger. They did not issue demands. Minho and his small team were quiet, thorough, and impeccably polite. They voted logically on galaxy-wide issues, often siding with the weaker species. When a dispute arose with the Morgani over mining rights, Minho did not threaten. He simply presented a detailed analysis of Mordani exo-armor power consumption, highlighting a previously unknown inefficiency. The implication was clear. "We know your systems better than you do. Be reasonable." The Mordani became reasonable. The galaxy had learned the cost of pushing a species that had spent its entire history enduring, adapting, and overcoming. Humanity had finally snapped, and in that sharp, clear moment, they had not destroyed. They had redefined. They had proven that the greatest power was not in the loudest shout or the biggest gun, but in the deepest understanding, the longest patience, and the quiet, unwavering resolve to protect what is yours. Minho finished his report on New Daegu and sent a final. Secure message to Earth. It was not a message of victory, but of responsibility. The snapping is done, he typed. The foundation is cracked, but the structure stands. Now we build. We build something stronger. We build something fairer. And we will never, ever let them forget why. He looked out at the nebula, a beautiful chaos of color and light. The galaxy was a vast and complicated place. But for the first time, humanity had a real seat at its table. Not as guests, not as children, but as equals who had earned their place the hardest way possible, by proving they could take it, and then choosing calmly to share it instead.